A story about an unfaithful husband left his wife in her last days and brought his mistress to the funeral. All he cared about was knowing what she had left him in her will. But what he didn't know was that his wife had planned one surprise. When he found out what it was, a chill ran down his spine. The pristine hallways of Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan echoed with the constant beeping of medical equipment, a sound that had become all too familiar to Emily Harrison over the last 8 months. Late autumn sunlight filtered through the vertical blinds, casting striped shadows across her hospital bed. At 34, Emily's once vibrant features had been emaciated by aggressive chemotherapy. Her honey blonde hair had long ago been replaced by colorful silk scarves that her sister Olivia brought her every week. On this particular Wednesday morning, Emily was propped up on her pillows, absently toying with the diamond wedding ring that now hung loose on her thin finger. Her husband James was supposed to have visited yesterday, but he had called with another excuse about an important real estate meeting he couldn't postpone. It was the 3rd time this month. "Mrs. Harrison," the soft voice of Dr. Rachel Chan pulled Emily from her thoughts. The oncologist stood in the doorway with a clipboard in hand, her expression carefully neutral. "Do you feel up for a conversation about your latest test results?" Emily managed a weak smile. "Of course, Dr. Chan, though I have a feeling I already know what you're going to say." Before the doctor could respond, quick footsteps sounded, and Olivia burst into the room, her designer handbag swinging wildly. I'm here. Sorry I'm late. The traffic was absolutely insane on 5th Avenue. She rushed to Emily's side, taking her sister's hand. At 31, Olivia was the spitting image of what Emily used to be. Tall, athletic, with the same honey blonde hair and warm brown eyes. "You're just in time," Dr. Chan said, closing the door behind her. "I was just about to discuss the results of Emily's latest scan." The air in the room grew dense as Dr. Chan pulled up a chair and began to explain the new developments. The cancer had spread more aggressively than they had anticipated. The experimental treatment they had hoped would buy her more time wasn't working as expected. Emily listened with an oddly calm expression, while Olivia's grip on her hand progressively tightened. "How much time?" Emily asked, her voice steady. Dr. Chan's professional demeanor softened slightly. "Without aggressive intervention, 3 to 4 months at most." "I'm so sorry, Emily." Olivia let out a choked sob, but Emily simply nodded as if receiving confirmation of something she had long suspected. "Thank you for being honest with me, Dr. Chan." After the doctor left, Olivia turned to her sister, tears streaming down her face. "We need to call James. He should have been here for this." Emily's lips curled into a bitter smile. "He's busy, Liv. Important meetings. You know how he is." "Busy? Busy?" Olivia's voice rose sharply. "He's your husband, for God's sake. And where the hell has he been spending Aunt Martha's inheritance? Because it certainly hasn't been on your treatment." "Liv, please," Emily sighed, though a flash of pain crossed her features. Her distant aunt's inheritance had been substantial, nearly $5 million. James had insisted on managing it, claiming his background in finance made him best suited for the task. Lately, however, Emily had begun to wonder about some of his investment decisions. A knock on the door interrupted their conversation. Sarah Powell, one of the newest nurses on the floor, came in with Emily's medication. Tall, striking, with perfectly coiffed dark hair and expensive-looking scrubs, Sarah had only been working on the oncology floor for a few months. "Time for your morning meds, Mrs. Harrison," she announced with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. As Sarah administered the medication, Emily suddenly felt a wave of nausea, unlike her usual symptoms. Rushing to the bathroom, she barely made it in time. Olivia followed her, holding her sister's hair back as she vomited. "This is new," Olivia commented, worried. "We should call Dr. Chan again." But Emily had gone still, a strange expression crossing her face. "Liv?" she whispered. "What's today's date?" "October 15th. Why?" Emily's hands began to tremble. "I'm late. Very late." "Late for what?" Olivia asked, before sudden comprehension dawned on her face. "Oh my God, Emily!" "Are you saying I need a pregnancy test?" Emily said, her voice shaking. The next hour was a flurry of activity. Olivia rushed to the hospital pharmacy, returning with a test. When the 2 pink lines appeared, Emily stared at them in disbelief, tears finally breaking her composed facade. "This can't be happening," she whispered. "The doctor said the chemo. They said it would be impossible." "We need to tell James," Olivia insisted, already pulling out her phone. "No," Emily grabbed her sister's wrist with surprising strength. "Not yet. I need time to process this." But as Emily lay in her hospital bed that night, alone with her thoughts, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The way James had been acting lately, the missing money from their accounts, the constant excuses. And there was something about Sarah, the new nurse, something in the way she looked at Emily with those calculating eyes. Little did Emily know that, at that very moment, James Harrison was signing the check for a down payment on a luxurious penthouse on the Upper East Side. Across the table, Sarah Powell, who hadn't been a nurse for very long, ran her fingers along the rim of her wine glass, a triumphant smile on her perfectly painted lips. "To new beginnings," she whispered, raising her glass. James clinked his glass to hers, not a trace of guilt on his handsome face. "To us," he responded, "and to Emily's generous Aunt Martha, rest in peace." The autumn wind howled outside the expensive restaurant's windows, bringing with it the first hints of the coming winter. But the true storm that was brewing would make the weather seem calm, compared to the devastating revelations that lay ahead. The revelation of her pregnancy sent ripples through Emily's carefully constructed world, transforming her final months into something far more complex than she could have imagined. In the days following the discovery, she found herself torn between hope and despair, between the miracle growing inside her and the cancer consuming her body. A week after the pregnancy test, Emily sat in Dr. Chan's office, accompanied by Olivia. The oncologist's face was grim as she reviewed Emily's latest blood work. "The situation is very complicated," Dr. Chan began carefully. "Your pregnancy is extremely high risk, Emily, and continuing with the pregnancy means we will have to modify your treatment plan significantly. Some treatments will have to be stopped entirely." "What does that mean for her time?" Olivia asked, her voice a bare whisper. Dr. Chan's silence was telling before she finally answered. "Instead of 3 to 4 months, we could be talking about 6 to 8 weeks, maybe less." Emily's hand moved instinctively to her belly, which was still flat. "And the baby?" "With immediate intervention and bed rest, there is a possibility, a small one, that the baby could survive long enough to be viable. But Emily, you have to understand, carrying this pregnancy to that point would almost certainly mean sacrificing what little time you have left." The weight of the decision hung in the air. Emily closed her eyes, tears slipping down her gaunt cheeks. "I want to try," she whispered. "This baby is my last chance to leave something of myself behind." Later that afternoon, Emily finally mustered the courage to call James. The phone rang 5 times before going to voicemail. She tried again, and again. On the 4th attempt, he finally answered, sounding irritated. "Emily, I'm in the middle of something important." "James, I need you to come to the hospital. There's something we need to discuss. Something important." There was a pause followed by muffled voices in the background. "Can it wait until tomorrow? I'm closing on a big deal here." "No, it can't wait. James, Listen, honey. I've got to go. The clients are waiting. I'll try to stop by tomorrow, okay?" The line went dead before Emily could respond. She stared at the phone in her hand, a strange sense of numbness spreading across her chest. Olivia, who had been pretending not to listen, could no longer contain herself. "That's it. I'm hiring a private investigator." "Liv, no. No, Emily. This has gone on for too long. He's barely been here for you. He's been making excuses about Aunt Martha's inheritance money, and now he can't even be bothered to come to the hospital when his dying wife needs him. Something is not right." Emily wanted to argue, but she was too tired. Besides, a part of her had begun to suspect that Olivia was right. The way the new nurse, Sarah, always seemed to be around when James visited. The whispered phone conversations she had overheard him having in the hallway. The growing gaps in their joint accounts. 2 days later, Olivia burst into Emily's hospital room, her face flushed with rage, her hands clutching a manila envelope. "You need to see this," she said, her voice trembling. "The private investigator works fast." Inside the envelope were dozens of photographs. James and Sarah at expensive restaurants. James and Sarah entering a luxurious apartment building. James and Sarah shopping at Tiffany's. But it was the last photo that made Emily's blood run cold. James and Sarah, kissing passionately, outside Mount Sinai Hospital, directly beneath the window of Emily's room. "There's more," Olivia said gravely, pulling out bank statements and property records. "He's been liquidating your inheritance. Almost $4 million, Emily. He's been spending it on her. Jewelry, a penthouse, expensive trips. And get this, Sarah isn't even a real nurse. She got the job using fake credentials, probably to keep an eye on you." Emily stared at the evidence of her husband's betrayal, feeling something inside her shatter. But along with the pain came something else, a cold, clear anger she had never experienced before. "How long?" she asked in a low voice. "According to the private investigator, at least 6 months. They met at a bar right after your diagnosis. She knew exactly who he was, who you were, and about Aunt Martha's money. This was calculated, Emily." That night, as Emily lay awake in her hospital bed, she began to plot. The baby inside her might not survive. She might not survive, but she would make sure James Harrison remembered her until the day he died. Over the next few weeks, Emily put her plan into motion. She made several private calls to her aunt's old lawyer, Mr. Davidson, who had always had a special fondness for her. She had new documents drafted. She modified her will and set up a series of events that would unfold after her death. James continued his pattern of brief, distracted visits, never staying longer than 15 minutes. He still hadn't noticed her pregnancy, though she was beginning to show. Not that it mattered. She had lost the baby 3 days after seeing the photographs, the stress and her weakened body unable to sustain the tiny life within her. She didn't tell James about the miscarriage. She didn't tell him anything anymore. Sarah continued her shifts, seemingly unaware that Emily knew everything. The woman had the audacity to act concerned, to touch Emily with fake sympathy as she administered her medications. Every touch felt like a burn, now that Emily knew the truth. One particularly bold afternoon, Sarah even tried to make conversation while changing Emily's IV. "Your husband seems so devoted," Sarah said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "It must be hard for him to see you like this." Emily looked directly into Sarah's eyes, her gaze steady. "Yes, James has always been good at acting devoted. Tell me, Sarah, do you like the emerald necklace he bought you? The one from Tiffany's?" The IV bag slipped from Sarah's hands, splashing fluid onto the floor. Her perfectly composed face cracked for an instant, showing the calculating creature underneath. I don't know what you're talking about, Sarah stammered, quickly regaining her composure. Don't you? Emily's voice was soft, almost sweet. That's odd, because I have a beautiful photograph of you wearing it while you were kissing my husband right outside this hospital. The green really does suit you. Sarah fled the room, leaving the IV bag dripping on the floor. She never returned to Emily's floor after that day, calling in sick and eventually resigning from her position. As Emily's condition rapidly deteriorated, she focused all her remaining energy on finalizing her plans. Mr. Davidson visited her frequently, helping her organize everything down to the last detail. The old lawyer's eyes would often fill with tears as they worked, but Emily remained clear-eyed and focused. "Are you sure about this?" he asked one afternoon, after they had finished signing the final documents. "It's not too late to change your mind." Emily touched the simple mirror she had asked him to bring, an antique piece with an ornate silver frame. "I'm sure, Mr. Davidson. Sometimes the cruelest punishment isn't to take everything from someone. It's to force them to look at themselves and truly see what they've become." Olivia, who had barely left her sister's side throughout all this, worried that Emily's desire for revenge was consuming her last days. But Emily seemed more at peace than she had been in months. "I know you think I'm wasting my time on this," Emily told her sister one night, as they shared a pint of smuggled ice cream. "But this isn't just about revenge, Liv. It's about justice. It's about making sure that when I'm gone, James can never forget what he did. Every time he looks in a mirror, every time he sees his own reflection, he'll remember. And maybe, just maybe, it will make him think twice before doing this to someone else." As October turned into November, and November began to fade into December, Emily's condition worsened drastically. The cancer was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated, hastened by the stress of the pregnancy loss and her interrupted treatments. James, seemingly oblivious to the change in his wife's demeanor, continued with his sporadic visits. If he noticed that Sarah no longer worked at the hospital, he never mentioned it. He was too preoccupied with his phone, with his important meetings, with the life he was building on the foundation of his wife's suffering. What he didn't know was that Emily had already set the wheels in motion for her final act. The papers were signed, the arrangements were made, and the trap was set. All that was left was for Emily to close her eyes for the last time, something that, according to Dr. Chan, would be very soon. When the first winter snow began to fall outside her hospital window, Emily Harrison smiled faintly, thinking of the storm that would soon envelop her husband's carefully constructed world of lies. The mirror was wrapped in her nightstand drawer, waiting for its moment to reflect the truth back at the man who had betrayed her. On a particularly cold December morning, James made an unexpected appearance at the hospital. For once, he wasn't wearing his usual expensive suit, but casual clothes, a clear sign he had come from somewhere other than work. The scent of an unfamiliar perfume clung to his neck. "Emily," he said, trying to sound concerned, "I've been thinking about your treatment options. I've had to make some difficult decisions about the inheritance money." Emily watched him with quiet intensity as he paced the room, launching into a carefully rehearsed speech about investment losses and market downturns. She noticed how he wouldn't meet her eyes, how his hands fiddled with his wedding ring, a nervous habit he had developed over the past few months. "The thing is," he continued, "most of the money is tied up in long-term investments. We may have to consider moving you to a less expensive facility." Olivia, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, suddenly stood up. "Are you serious, James? Less expensive? Do you mean a facility that wouldn't notice if its nurses had fake credentials?" James's head snapped up, his face paling slightly. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about," Olivia spat. "How long did you think you could hide it?" "The affair, the money, McDon, I don't know what." "Enough!" Emily interrupted, her voice quiet but firm. "I know about Sarah, James. I know about the penthouse, the jewelry, the trips. I know everything." The silence that followed was deafening. James stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Then something shifted in his expression. The mask of the loving husband came off to reveal something colder, more calculating. "Fine," he said, his voice harder now. "You want the truth?" "Yes. I'm with Sarah. And yes, I've been spending the money. What did you expect me to do, Emily? Sit here and watch you die? Waste my life in hospital rooms? Sarah makes me happy. She makes me feel alive." Emily absorbed every cruel word without flinching, while Olivia looked ready to physically attack him. But Emily put a restraining hand on her sister's arm. "Get out of here," Emily said calmly. "And James, don't bother coming back." He left without another word, the door closing behind him with a decisive click. Only then did Emily allow herself to cry, silent tears streaming down her face as Olivia held her. That night, Mr. Davidson made another visit, bringing with him the final drafts of Emily's revised will and several other important documents. "Everything is in order," he assured her, his kind eyes full of sympathy. "The trusts have been set up, the donations arranged, and the timing of the revelations carefully planned." "Are you absolutely sure about the mirror?" Emily touched the smooth surface of the antique mirror, more sure than ever. James has spent his entire life only seeing what he wants to see in his reflection. It's time he saw the truth. As December wore on, Emily's health declined rapidly. The cancer was spreading aggressively now, and the pain had become almost unbearable. Through it all, she clung to her plan, finding strength in the knowledge that justice would finally be served. James never returned to the hospital after his confession. According to the private investigator, who continued to send Olivia updates, he and Sarah had taken a luxurious vacation to the Maldives, using the last of Emily's inheritance money to stay in an overwater villa that cost thousands per night. "He's going to lose everything," Olivia said one night, as she looked over the latest investigator's report. "The penthouse, the cars, the investments, it's all in your name." "When the truth comes out," Emily finished weakly, "he'll be left with nothing but his own reflection, and that will be his greatest punishment." The hospital room had become a kind of command center, with Mr. Davidson and Olivia working tirelessly to ensure every detail of Emily's plan was perfect. The mirror waited in her drawer. Its ornate silver frame glinted every time the drawer was opened, like a promise of justice to come. As the year came to a close, Emily could feel her strength fading, but she held on, determined to see her plan through to the end. The stage was set. The players were in position. And soon, very soon, James Harrison would learn the true cost of his betrayal. The night Emily Harrison died was bitterly cold, with snow falling silently outside her hospital room window. She passed away peacefully in her sleep, holding Olivia's hand, the antique mirror safely tucked away in her nightstand drawer. It was December 31st, the last day of a year that had changed everything. James and Sarah were still in the Maldives when the call came. Olivia had insisted on being the one to break the news, her voice cold and clinical as she informed her brother-in-law of his wife's passing. "The funeral is in 3 days," she said bluntly. "Try to tear yourself away from your vacation long enough to attend. Wouldn't want people talking, would you?" The funeral was held at St. Patrick's Cathedral, a grand event that Emily had meticulously planned. She had specified every detail, from the white roses that adorned her casket to the music that would be played. The church was packed with mourners, friends, family, colleagues, and even Dr. Chan, who sat quietly in the back, her eyes red-rimmed. James arrived exactly 7 minutes before the service began, wearing a black, appropriately somber suit that still held the fresh smell of department store tags. Sarah had the audacity to accompany him, though she at least had the sense to sit several rows back, attempting to blend into the crowd. Throughout the service, James played the part of the grieving widower to perfection. He dabbed his eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, accepted condolences with a well-practiced look of devastation, and even managed to deliver a brief eulogy that had several older aunts reaching for their tissues. "Emily was the love of my life," he declared from the pulpit, his voice choked with fabricated emotion. "She fought so bravely, and I was with her every step of the way." In the front row, Olivia's knuckles went white as she gripped the armrest, while Mr. Davidson, seated beside her, wore an expression that might have been a smirk. The real drama, however, began 3 days after the funeral, when James received a call from Mr. Davidson's office, requesting his presence for the reading of Emily's will. The lawyer's secretary specified that he was to come alone, with no guests or legal representation. James arrived at the law office dressed in another new suit, this one navy blue with pinstripes. He carried himself with the confidence of a man expecting to inherit millions. Sarah waited for him at a coffee shop across the street, no doubt already planning how they would spend his fortune. The conference room where Mr. Davidson received him was imposing, with dark wood paneling and views of snow-covered Central Park. Olivia was already there, along with a court stenographer and a videographer, another of Emily's specific requests. "Before we begin," Mr. Davidson said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses, "Mrs. Harrison left explicit instructions that this proceeding be recorded in its entirety. I trust you have no objections." James waved a hand dismissively. "Of course not. Shall we get on with it?" Mr. Davidson opened an elegant leather binder and began to read. "I, Emily Catherine Harrison, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament." What followed was nothing short of theatrical. First came the small bequests, jewelry to cousins, books to friends, her art collection to various museums. Then, Mr. Davidson cleared his throat and moved on to the main course. "As to the remainder of my estate, including all funds inherited from my late Aunt Martha Harrison, all properties purchased with said funds, and all investments made with them." James leaned forward slightly, a hungry glint in his eyes. "I hereby bequeath the entirety of these assets, valued at approximately $4 million, to be split equally between the following charities: the American Cancer Society, the Mount Sinai Hospital Oncology Research Department, and the National Domestic Violence Coalition." The color drained from James's face. "What?" "Furthermore," Mr. Davidson continued, seemingly oblivious to James's distress, "I direct that all properties purchased with my inheritance, including but not limited to the penthouse apartment at 740 Park Avenue, be liquidated immediately, with the proceeds to go to the aforementioned charities." "This is ridiculous," James blurted, rising from his chair. "She can't do this. That money was for me. I'm her husband." "Please sit down, Mr. Harrison. There's more." James collapsed back into his chair, his carefully maintained facade crumbling. "To my husband, James Alexander Harrison," Mr. Davidson read, his voice taking on an almost theatrical quality. "I leave 2 things. First, this letter, to be read immediately." He produced a cream-colored envelope and handed it to James, who took it with trembling hands. "And second, Mr. Bell," Davidson continued, as Olivia reached under the conference table and pulled out a familiar-looking wrapped package. "This mirror." James stared at the antique mirror as Olivia placed it in front of him, its silver frame glinting under the office lights. With shaking fingers, He opened Emily's letter and began to read aloud. As per Mr. Davidson's instructions. My dearest James, by the time you read this, I will be gone, and you will be finding out that your carefully laid plans have crumbled. Yes, I knew about Sarah. I knew about the penthouse, the jewelry, the trips. I knew it all. I also knew about the baby, our baby, that I lost while you were buying emeralds for your mistress, the child you never knew about, because you were too busy building a new life on the knowledge of my death to notice you were carrying your child. But this letter isn't about punishment, James. It's about reflection. The mirror I have left you is very special to me. It belonged to my grandmother, who gave it to my mother, who gave it to me. It has seen 3 generations of women in my family face their truths, both beautiful and ugly. Now it's your turn. Every morning when you wake up, I want you to look into this mirror. Really look at yourself. See the man who could leave his dying wife alone in a hospital while he was wooing a fake nurse. See the man who could spend his wife's inheritance on trinkets for his mistress while she was fighting for her life. See the man who lost the chance to be a father because he was too selfish to be a husband. The oval in the mirror will never lie to you, James, even though you have spent your entire life lying to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, one day you will look into it and finally see yourself as I saw you at the end. Don't bother looking for the money. It's gone. Don't bother trying to contest the will. Mr. Davidson has made it unbreakable. Don't bother running to Sarah. She will be gone too, once she realizes there is nothing left for her to take. All you have now is your reflection. James, I hope you learn to live with it. With all the love I once had, Emily. The silence that followed was absolute. James stared at the letter, then at the mirror, his face a mask of horror as the full implications of his situation sank in. This is impossible, he whispered. The money, the penthouse. It is being seized as we speak, Mr. Davidson informed him calmly. Your joint accounts have been frozen, and the property management company has been notified of the change in ownership. Miss Powell has already received an eviction notice. As if on cue, James's phone began to buzz. Sarah's name popped up on the screen, accompanied by a series of increasingly frantic text messages. James, there are people at the penthouse with papers. They say we have to leave immediately. What's happening with our accounts? James, answer me. James's world continued to crumble in that conference room as Mr. Davidson methodically explained the full scope of Emily's arrangements. Not only had she distributed her inheritance, but she had also documented every penny James had spent on Sarah, every fraudulent transaction, every attempt to conceal money. By the way, Olivia added, her voice brimming with satisfaction, the hospital board has been very interested in our documentation regarding Sarah's faked nursing credentials. The police are probably speaking with her right now. James slumped in his chair, his expensive suit suddenly seeming to hang loose on his body. He picked up the mirror with trembling hands, staring into his reflection. For the first time, he seemed to truly see himself, not the successful businessman he pretended to be, but the cheating, fraudulent husband he had become. There must be something left, he mumbled, more to himself than to them. The house in the Hamptons, my investment accounts. The house was purchased with Emily's inheritance, Mr. Davidson explained patiently. As for your personal accounts, well, it appears most of your money went to supporting a rather expensive lifestyle with Miss Powell. The credit card statements are quite telling. James's phone continued to buzz relentlessly. Sarah's messages grew more and more desperate. The bank says our accounts are frozen. They say the credit cards are canceled. James, I'm being served with legal papers for fraud. Where are you? Olivia watched her brother-in-law's unraveling with cold satisfaction. She pulled one last envelope from her purse. Emily left you one more thing to see, James. She wanted you to know exactly what you threw away. Inside the envelope were ultrasound photos, grainy, black and white images of the baby he never had the chance to live. The date showed they were taken just days after Emily discovered James's betrayal. She was carrying your child while you were buying Sarah that Cartier bracelet, Olivia said softly. She lost the baby the day after she saw the photos of you two together outside the hospital room. She never told you because you never gave her the chance. James looked at the ultrasound photos. His hands were shaking so badly they nearly fell out. In the mirror's reflection, he could see his face crumple, the reality of what he had done finally hitting him with full force. Mr. Davidson cleared his throat. There's one more thing. Emily made a video statement before she passed. She requested that it be played now. The videographer set up a screen, and suddenly Emily's face appeared before them. She was clearly near the end, her features emaciated, but her eyes were bright with purpose. Her voice, though weak, carried an unmistakable strength. James, if you're watching this, then everything has gone according to plan. You're probably angry. You're probably feeling betrayed. Good. Now you know what it feels like. But this isn't just revenge. This is about justice, about consequences, about looking in the mirror and facing the truth. I loved you, James. I loved you enough to want to bring your child into this world, even as I was leaving it. But you couldn't even give me the dignity of honesty in my final months. Instead, you made me watch as you built a new life with someone else, using my death as your stepping stone. The mirror I have left you belonged to the strongest women I've ever known. They used it to face their truths, to gather their strength, to remake themselves when life broke them apart. Now it's yours. Use it well, and remember, every time you look into it, that your reflection is all that's left of the life you threw away. The video ended, and the room was silent again. Outside, the snow was still falling on Manhattan, covering the city in a white canvas. But inside that conference room, James Harrison's world had turned permanently dark. His phone had stopped buzzing. A quick glance showed a final message from Sarah. Don't bother calling. I'm done. You're not worth the fraud charges. James picked up the mirror again, staring into it, as if he expected his reflection to show him something different, something better than the truth. But Emily was right. Mirrors don't lie. And in that moment, James Harrison finally saw himself clearly, a man who had destroyed everything he had in pursuit of a fantasy that had evaporated like morning mist. The car service is waiting downstairs, Mr. Davidson said in a low voice. They'll take you wherever you need to go, though I should mention that the rental agreement for your apartment was in Emily's name. Those papers have been served as well. 2 months after Emily's death, James Harrison sat in a small studio in Queens, a world away from the lavish penthouse he had shared with Sarah. The antique mirror hung on the wall opposite his bed, exactly where he could see it first thing in the morning and last thing at night, just as Emily had intended. The fallout from the will reading had been swift and merciless. Sarah had disappeared completely, leaving only the lingering scent of her expensive perfume and a series of increasingly hostile voicemails before she blocked his number entirely. The police had questioned her about her fraudulent nursing credentials, but she had managed to flee to Mexico before they could press charges. James's professional life had imploded spectacularly. News of his behavior during Emily's illness had spread through Manhattan's real estate circles. Former clients distanced themselves, partners dissolved their associations, and his once golden reputation was now hopelessly tarnished. Today, he was preparing for his first job interview in 20 years, not for a prestigious position in real estate development, but for an entry-level sales position at a small property management firm in Brooklyn. The suit he wore was one of the few things he had managed to hold on to from his old life, though it now hung loosely on him. Before he left, he did what he had done every morning since receiving Emily's letter. He stood in front of the mirror and truly looked at himself. "What do you see?" he whispered, echoing the question his court-ordered therapist had taught him to ask. The therapist had been Olivia's idea, part of her own journey toward healing. She had also told him about the Brooklyn job, though she still couldn't bring herself to talk to him directly. The reflection stared back at him, a man in his late 40s with gray hair at his temples, deep-set lines around his mouth and eyes. But it was the eyes themselves that had changed the most. The arrogant glint was gone, replaced by something darker, more haunted. His phone buzzed. A text message from his younger sister, Kate. She was the only family member who still spoke to him, and even she kept her distance. "Don't forget to eat something before the interview. And James, remember what Dr. Patterson said about owning your story." Dr. Patterson, his therapist, had been working with him on accountability. No more excuses, no more deflections, no more carefully crafted narratives to hide behind. Just the raw, ugly truth of what he had done. The subway ride to Brooklyn was a new experience for a man who had once refused to travel anywhere without his private car service. He found himself watching his fellow passengers, wondering about their stories, their struggles, their losses. He had never done that before. He had never truly looked at people beyond what they could offer him. At one stop, a young woman got on, clearly in the late stages of pregnancy. Something about her reminded him of Emily, of the ultrasound photos he now carried in his wallet. When the train lurched to a stop, she stumbled slightly. James got up immediately, offering her his seat. "Thank you," she said, smiling tiredly. "Not many people notice anymore." "I notice now," he replied softly, more to himself than to her. "I notice everything now." The interview was scheduled in a modest office building in Dumbo. James arrived early and sat in a small coffee shop across the street to collect his thoughts. The last time he had been to Brooklyn was to scout potential development sites, properties he had planned to buy and flip using Emily's money. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a reminder from his therapy app. Daily reflection. What truth are you facing today? James took out his wallet, pulling out the ultrasound photos he now carried everywhere. They were crinkled from use, the edges frayed. He had asked Olivia, through Kate, if she had any others. She had sent him a USB drive containing hundreds of photos of Emily during her illness, moments he should have been there for. But he wasn't. "Mr. Harrison." The receptionist's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "They're ready for you now." The interview room was small, with a view of the Manhattan Bridge through dirty windows. 3 people sat at a folding table. Tom Chen, the owner of the firm, Maria Rodriguez, the head of HR. And to James's surprise, David Turner, a former client he had worked with in his old life. "James," David said, his expression unreadable. "I didn't expect to see your name on our candidate list." "I didn't expect to be on it either," James replied honestly. "But here we are. In fact," David leaned forward, "why don't you tell us why you're here? And James, the real reason, not the polished version." James looked at each face around the table. Then he took a deep breath. Dr. Patterson's words echoed in his mind. "Your story is ugly, but it's yours. Own it." "I'm here because I destroyed my life," he began, his voice steady. "I betrayed my dying wife in the worst way possible. I squandered millions of dollars that weren't mine to spend. I became someone I can barely look at in the mirror, though I have to, every single day, because my wife made sure of that in her will." The room was silent as James continued, laying bare every ugly detail of his downfall. He watched as their expressions shifted from surprise to disgust to something akin to understanding as he described his ongoing therapy, his attempts to make amends, his daily struggles with the mirror that forced him to confront himself. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," James concluded. "I don't deserve it. What I'm asking for is a chance to start over, to be someone different from the man I see in that mirror every morning." David Turner leaned back in his chair, studying James with a mixture of contempt and curiosity. "Why should we trust you? Your past behavior shows a complete lack of ethics and moral compass." "You shouldn't trust me," James answered. "Not yet. I haven't earned it. But I will, every single day, if you give me the chance." After the interview, James walked along the Brooklyn waterfront, watching the Manhattan skyline glint in the winter sun. His phone buzzed with a message from Tom Chen. "We need to discuss some additional details. Can you come back tomorrow?" That night, as James sat in his studio apartment, eating Chinese takeout from the restaurant downstairs, he pulled out his therapy journal. Dr. Patterson had insisted he document his journey, not for anyone else to read, but as another form of reflection. "Day 67 without Emily," he wrote. "I dreamed about her last night, not the Emily at the end, thin and angry and knowing everything, but the Emily at the beginning, the one who laughed at my bad jokes and believed in me more than I deserved. In the dream, she was holding our baby, the one we lost, the one I never knew existed until it was too late. She didn't say anything. She just looked at me with those eyes that always saw me, even when I couldn't see myself." A knock on his door interrupted his writing. When he opened it, he found Olivia there, looking uncomfortable, but determined. "Kate told me about your interview," she said without preamble. "I thought you should have this." She handed him a box and turned to leave. "Olivia, wait!" James called out to her. "I know it doesn't mean anything, but I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." She stopped, not turning around. "You're right. It doesn't mean anything. But Emily would want you to have these things. She saved everything, you know? Every movie ticket, every birthday card, every stupid little note you ever wrote her. She believed in you to the very end. That was her tragedy." After she left, James opened the box with trembling hands. Inside were photographs, letters, and small mementos from his life with Emily. At the bottom was a journal, Emily's journal from her time in the hospital. He read it all night, tears streaming down his face as he discovered the wife he had never truly known. She wrote about her hopes for the baby, her fears of dying, her growing suspicions about his betrayal. The last entry was dated just 3 days before her death. "Dearest James, by the time someone reads this, I'll be gone. The mirror I'm leaving you isn't just a punishment, though God knows you deserve it. It's about hope. Hope that somewhere inside the man who could betray me so completely, there's still the man I fell in love with, the man who brought me coffee in bed and danced with me in the kitchen, the man who promised to love me in sickness and in health. I'm not leaving you the mirror to torture you, James. I'm leaving it to save you, because sometimes we need to lose everything to find ourselves again. With love, always, Emily." The next morning, James returned to the property management office. Tom Chen was waiting for him alone. "We've talked it over," Tom said. "David was against hiring you. Maria was on the fence. But I believe in second chances, with conditions. You'll start at the bottom, minimum wage. Any complaints, any hint of impropriety, and you're out. And you'll have to share your story with our team, all of it. They need to understand who they're working with." James nodded, accepting every condition without an argument. As he walked out of the office with his new employee handbook, he saw his reflection in the glass doors of the building. For the first time since Emily's death, He didn't look away immediately. That night, he sat at his small desk and began to write. Dear Emily, today I got a new start. Not because I wanted it, but because you made it impossible to continue being the man I was. The mirror you left me no longer just reflects my face. It reflects my soul. And maybe, just maybe, that's beginning to change too. I will never forgive myself for what I did to you. I will never stop grieving for the family we could have had, but I promise you this. Every day, I will look in that mirror and try to be better than I was the day before. Not for me, but for you, for the baby we lost, for the man you always believed I could be. 1 year after Emily's death, James stood in front of the mirror in his studio apartment, adjusting the tie on his newly purchased suit. It wasn't designer brand anymore. Those days were gone, but it was clean and professional, appropriate for the event ahead. Today, the Emily Harrison Memorial Wing was being dedicated at Mount Sinai Hospital, funded with the money she had left to the oncology department. James had been invited, not as a guest of honor, but as a cautionary tale. Part of his therapy and redemption journey had involved speaking to medical ethics classes about patient vulnerability and the betrayal of trust. When the hospital board heard about his presentations, they decided his story should be part of the opening ceremony. His phone buzzed with a text message from Kate. Are you sure you want to do this? It's not too late to back out. James looked at his reflection one last time. The past year had aged him considerably. His hair was more gray than brown now, and the lines around his eyes had deepened. But there was something different in his gaze, something that hadn't been there before, perhaps purpose, or perhaps just the weight of genuine remorse. I'm sure, he texted back. Emily would want me to be there, not for me, but for the truth. The ceremony was scheduled for noon, but James arrived at Mount Sinai 2 hours early. He wanted to walk the familiar hallways one last time, to remember everything he had tried so hard to forget during Emily's illness. As he passed the oncology floor, where Emily had spent her final months, he saw a familiar face. Dr. Rachel Chan, Emily's oncologist. She was talking to a young couple, her expression compassionate, but serious. James hung back, watching the scene. The woman was clearly in the early stages of cancer treatment, her head wrapped in a colorful scarf, similar to the ones Emily used to wear. Her husband held her hand tightly, his face a mask of worry and love. The sight hit James like a physical punch. That should have been him with Emily, present, worried, loving. Instead, he had been planning vacations with Sarah, spending Emily's money on luxuries while she fought for her life alone. Mr. Harrison? He turned to find Dr. Chan standing behind him, her expression guarded. I know why you're here, she said quietly. The ceremony. I'll be speaking as well. She paused, studying his face. You look different. I am different, he replied. Too late, but different. Dr. Chan nodded slowly. Emily used to talk about you, you know, even after she knew about the affair. She would tell me about the man you used to be before the money and success changed you. She never stopped believing that man was still in there somewhere. James felt tears sting his eyes. He didn't deserve her faith. No, Dr. Chan agreed. He didn't. But that's the thing with faith, Mr. Harrison. It isn't about deserving. It's about believing in the possibility. She checked her watch. The ceremony starts in 2 hours. Are you ready to face everyone? The grand opening ceremony was held in the hospital's main auditorium. In the front row was Olivia, who had spearheaded much of the Memorial Wing's development. She didn't look at James as he took his assigned seat near the back. The hospital's chief of medicine opened the proceedings with a speech about progress and hope. Then came Dr. Chan, who spoke about Emily's courage during her treatment. Finally, it was James's turn. As he walked to the podium, a hush fell over the crowd. Many of them knew his story. It had been in the local papers when everything fell apart. The wealthy real estate developer who betrayed his dying wife and spent her inheritance on his mistress, only to lose it all in an act of poetic justice. James put his hands on the podium, taking a deep breath. In his pocket, he carried the worn ultrasound photo he always carried now. Today, he had added something else, the last photo ever taken of Emily, smiling faintly from her hospital bed, her eyes still full of light. "My name is James Harrison," he began, his voice steady. "And I'm here today not as a success story, but as a cautionary tale. A year ago, I was in this very same hospital, in a room upstairs, and I made the conscious decision to betray the person who needed me most. I had everything," James continued, his voice echoing in the silent auditorium. "A successful career, a beautiful home, and most importantly, a wife who loved me unconditionally. Emily was the kind of person who saw the best in everyone, especially me, even when I gave her every reason not to." He pulled out the photo of Emily in the hospital and held it up for the audience to see. "This is the last photo ever taken of my wife. While this picture was being taken, I was across town, picking out jewelry for my mistress with Emily's inheritance money. While Emily was fighting for her life in this hospital, I was planning a future with another woman. While she was carrying our unborn child, a child I never knew about until after she died, I was betraying every promise I made to her." In the front row, Olivia had finally turned to look at him, her expression unreadable. Beside her sat Mr. Davidson, the lawyer who had helped Emily orchestrate her final act of justice. "Emily left me two things in her will," James continued, his voice thick with emotion. "A letter and a mirror. The letter told me the truth about myself, truths I had been avoiding for years. And the mirror was her masterstroke, because she knew that my true punishment wouldn't be losing the money or the lifestyle or even my reputation. It would be having to look at myself every single day and see what I had become." He paused, pulling out the ultrasound photo. "This is the child we lost. Emily was carrying this baby while I was destroying our marriage. She lost the baby the day she found out about my betrayal. Another life I'm responsible for ending." The auditorium remained in a stunned silence. In the back, several reporters were scribbling notes frantically. The Emily Harrison Memorial Wing. It's not just about providing care for cancer patients. It's about protecting them when they are most vulnerable. It's about remembering that behind every diagnosis is a human being who deserves loyalty, love, and respect. Emily understood that. She lived it. And in her last act, she made sure her legacy would help others when they needed it most. James's voice cracked as he continued. "I now work in Brooklyn, at a small property management firm. Every morning I look in Emily's mirror before I go to work. Every night, I look again before I go to bed. And slowly, very slowly, I'm starting to see something different in my reflection. Not redemption. I don't deserve that. But maybe something akin to understanding. Understanding what I lost, what I threw away, and what I can never fix." He noticed movement in the audience. Sarah had slipped into the back of the auditorium. She looked different now, less polished, more real. Their eyes met briefly before she looked away. "Emily's final gift to me wasn't a punishment, though I deserved one. It was the chance to face myself truly every day, to see not just who I was, but who I could have been, who I could still become." Tears were flowing freely now, both in the audience and on the stage. James pulled out Emily's journal, opening it to the last page. Emily wrote something in her final days that I would like to share. She wrote, "Love isn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's about being there. It's about choosing to stay when leaving would be easier. It's about seeing the best in someone, even when they can't see it in themselves." He closed the journal carefully. I failed at all of those things. I chose the easy path. I chose luxury over loyalty, comfort over commitment. And in doing so, I lost something far more precious than money or status. I lost the chance to be the man Emily always believed I could be. In the front row, Olivia was openly weeping. Next to her, Dr. Chan reached over to squeeze her hand. "This wing will serve thousands of patients in the years to come. They will receive treatment here. They will find hope, maybe even healing. But I hope they also find something else, the kind of compassion and dignity that Emily showed even in her darkest moments. Because while I was busy betraying her, she was busy planning how her suffering could help others." James stepped away from the podium, but then turned back for one final thought. "There's a mirror in my apartment that shows me who I am. But in every reflection in this building, in every window, on every shiny surface, I hope people see who they could be." That was Emily's gift, not just to me, but to all of those her life touched. As he walked back to his seat, the applause was scattered and uncertain. This wasn't the kind of speech people knew how to react to. But the reaction wasn't the point. The truth was, after the ceremony, as people filed out of the auditorium, Sarah approached him. She looked older, more worn, but somehow more genuine than she had during their affair. "I heard you're working in Brooklyn now," she said quietly. "Property management." "Entry level," he replied. She nodded. "I'm in New Jersey, teaching nursing. Legitimate this time. I actually went back to school for it." "That's good. That's good." They stood in an awkward silence for a moment before Sarah spoke again. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we hadn't?" "No," James interrupted firmly. "I don't. Because asking that means asking if there was ever a right way to do something wrong." "There wasn't." Sarah nodded again, understanding. "The mirror," she said. "The one Emily left. Do you still have it?" "It's the first thing I see every morning, and the last thing I see every night." "Does it help?" James thought for a moment. "It doesn't make anything better. It doesn't fix what we did, but it makes sure I never forget. And maybe that's the point." As Sarah walked away, Olivia approached. It was the closest they had been to one another in months. "Emily would have appreciated the speech," she said dryly. "Not for the apology, but for the truth." "I don't expect forgiveness," James replied. "Good, because you won't get it." She paused. "But Emily believed in second chances, not second chances at what you had. That's gone forever. But second chances at being someone different, someone better." She handed him an envelope. Inside was a key. "The house in Connecticut," she explained. "The one Emily loved. I'm selling it. I thought you might want to say goodbye first. Emily was happy there before all of this. Maybe you need to see it one last time." The drive to the Connecticut house took James down winding country roads, dusted with early spring snow. It had been nearly 18 months since Emily's death, and the world had moved on, in subtle and profound ways. The Emily Harrison Memorial Wing was now fully operational, helping dozens of families navigate their cancer journeys. James's small Queens apartment had slowly become something akin to a home. And the mirror, Emily's final gift, had become less of a punishment and more of a daily reminder. He arrived at the familiar white colonial house just as the sun was setting. This had been their weekend refuge, the place where they had planned to retire one day. Emily had loved the garden, spending countless hours tending to her roses and planning future landscaping projects she would never get to complete. The key felt heavy in his hand as he walked to the front door. Inside, the house was exactly as they had left it that last summer, before Emily's diagnosis. Her gardening magazine was still in a neat stack on the coffee table. Her favorite blanket remained draped over the armchair by the window. The air smelled faintly of the lavender sachets she used to make and hide in drawers throughout the house. James moved slowly through the rooms. Memories flooded him at every turn. The kitchen where they used to make Sunday breakfast together. The study where Emily would grade papers from her literature classes while he reviewed property contracts. The sunroom, where she had first told him about her cancer, and where he had promised to be there for her. A promise he had broken in the worst way possible. Upstairs, he found himself standing at the doorway of what was supposed to be the nursery. They had talked about having children for years, always saying, someday, until that someday had run out. Now, knowing about the baby they had lost, the empty room felt like another indictment. His phone buzzed, a text message from his therapist, Dr. Patterson. Remember why you're there, not to punish yourself, but to face the truth, and to move forward. In the master bedroom, James found Emily's journal from before her illness. It was different from the hospital journal he now carried with him. This one was full of life, of hope, of future plans. The last entry was dated just 3 days before her diagnosis. James has been distant lately. Work, he says. Always work. But there's something else, something he's not telling me. I see him checking his phone more often, smiling at messages he isn't supposed to notice. There are times when he thinks I'm sleeping, and he'll get up out of bed to take calls in the hallway. I tell myself it's work, that he's just stressed about the new development project. I tell myself that 15 years of love and trust can't be wrong. Besides, we're going to try for a baby soon. He'll be a wonderful father. The words blurred as tears filled his eyes. He sat heavily on the edge of the bed, their bed, and pulled the mirror from his messenger bag. He had brought it with him, knowing he would need it for this moment. In its reflection, he saw not just himself, but the ghost of who he used to be, the man who had stood in this very room and promised Emily forever. The man who had held her through fertility treatments and disappointments, always saying, next time, until cancer took all their next times away. A knock on the door startled him. He went downstairs and found Olivia standing on the porch, her breath visible in the cold air. "I thought I'd find you here," she said, coming in without waiting for an invitation. "Kate told me you took the day off work." "I needed to see it one last time," James replied, "before you sell it." Olivia nodded, looking around the familiar space. "Did you find what you were looking for?" "I found more than I was prepared for." They stood in awkward silence until Olivia spoke again. "I found something among Emily's things, something she wanted you to have, but I wasn't ready to give it to you until now." She pulled an envelope from her coat pocket. She wrote it the day she found out about the baby, before she knew about Sarah, before everything fell apart. James took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a letter written in Emily's flowing handwriting. The paper crinkled as if it had been wet with tears. "My dearest James, I am sitting in our Connecticut bedroom as I write this, watching the sunset paint the sky with colors that remind me of our first date. Do you remember? We walked through Central Park as the autumn leaves were changing, and you said the sky looked like it was celebrating with us. You always had a way with words when you wanted to. Today, I found out that I'm pregnant. Our miracle baby, the one we stopped hoping for 4 years ago. I haven't told you yet. I wanted to find the perfect way to share this news, maybe here, at our weekend house, where we have talked so many times about the family we wanted to build. But something is shifting between us, isn't it? I feel you pulling away, becoming someone I don't quite recognize. There are times when I catch you looking at your phone, smiling at messages you quickly delete. Times when you think I'm sleeping, and you'll slip out of bed to take calls in the hallway. I tell myself it's work, that you're just stressed about the new development project. I tell myself that 15 years of love and trust can't be wrong. I am writing this letter because I want to remember this moment, this perfect, hopeful moment before whatever comes next. Because no matter what happens, I want you to know that I believe in you. Not just the successful businessman you've become, but the man underneath. The man who brought me coffee in bed just because. The man who learned to tend the garden because he knew it made me happy. The man who held me through 3 miscarriages and still wanted to try again. That man is still in there, James. I have to believe it, because this baby deserves that version of you. The real you, not the person you've been pretending to be lately. If you're reading this, it means something has happened. Either something wonderful or something terrible. Either way, I want you to remember who you are. Not who the world thinks you are or who you think you need to be, but who you are in your heart. I love you, James. I love you enough to forgive whatever comes. I love you enough to believe you'll find your way back to yourself, even if I'm not there to see it. Always yours, Emily. James collapsed to the floor, the letter clutched against his chest. Olivia watched him, her own tears now falling freely. She never sent it, Olivia said quietly. She found out about Sarah the next day. Everything changed after that. Why are you giving me this now? James asked, his voice raw. Because Emily was right about one thing. You did find your way back to yourself. Too late for her, too late for the baby, but maybe not too late for something else. What do you mean? Olivia took a deep breath. The memorial wing. They're starting a program for families of cancer patients, support groups, counseling resources. They want someone to talk to families about what not to do, about how to be there for their loved ones. They want you. James looked at her in disbelief. Me? After everything I did? Because of everything you did, and everything you've done since. You are living proof of the worst and the best of human nature. She paused. Emily would want you to do it. James pulled out the mirror again, studying his reflection in the dying light. The face that stared back was older, sadder, but somehow more real than it had been in years. I'll do it, he said. Finally, not for redemption. I don't deserve that, but for the truth. For Emily. Olivia nodded. The house goes on the market next week, but Emily's garden. I thought you might want to help maintain it. Not own it, but just keep it alive for her. As they walked through the house for the last time, turning off lights and closing doors, James paused at the doorway of the nursery. Do you think she knew? He asked. When she planned everything, with the mirror, with the will, do you think she knew that I would eventually understand? Emily always saw the best in people, Olivia answered, even when they couldn't see it in themselves. She touched his arm briefly, the first voluntary contact she had initiated since Emily's death. Don't waste her faith in you. Not again. Outside, the snow had started to fall again, covering Emily's dormant garden with a white blanket. James carefully tucked the letter into his pocket next to the ultrasound photo he always carried. In his other pocket, the mirror pressed against his heart like a reminder. Goodbye, Emily, he whispered to the empty house. I'm sorry I couldn't be who you needed me to be when it mattered. But I promise, I swear, that I will be the man you always believed I could be. Every day, for the rest of my life, I'll look into your mirror and try to see what you saw. As he drove away, the house growing smaller in his rearview mirror, James felt something shift inside him. Not forgiveness. He would never forgive himself. Not redemption, which wasn't his to claim, but maybe something akin to purpose, a chance to turn his greatest shame into something meaningful, to help others avoid his mistakes, to keep Emily's legacy alive in ways she might have wished for. Stories like this have the power to touch the heart and enlighten the mind. Were you moved by it? Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next chapters of this exciting journey. There's always another story that can brighten your day, and who knows, the next video might be just what you need. Click now, and we'll see you there.